Everyone. My name is Mara Tippett. I'm the Associate Director at Raritan Headwaters, and I'd like to welcome you to our first Stories in Land Preservation webinar. And this is the first in a planned series of presentations. We'll hear more about the behind-the-scenes work that goes into preserving some of our treasured open space and farmland that is so critically important for the protection and improvement of water quality, wildlife habitats, natural landscapes, and the well-being of all those living, working, and playing in the watershed. Over the last 2 years, in particular, I've been very grateful to have so many beautiful preserved areas nearby to visit and explore with my family, and I know I'm not alone. Americans have flocked to outdoor spaces, driving up park visitation, across the country during the pandemic, which highlighted what many of us already knew, that these spaces serve us in many ways, from the ecosystem services that they provide to psychological well-being. So I'm excited to hear more about the stories and people behind our protected lands, and I'm sure learn about the process as each story, each space presented a unique set of opportunities and challenges. Just a little bit about us, if I can just advance my slides here. Sometimes it's a little sticky, should be moving, there we go. RHA is a nonprofit watershed conservation organization that has been working for over 60 years to protect clean water for the residents who live here, as well as all those downstream and throughout the state who rely on the water that we protect. And through science and stewardship, including our stream monitoring and well testing programs, our annual watershed-wide education and advocacy, we protect the water in our rivers, in our streams, and in our homes. Over 5 decades, we have worked to preserve land that protects important water resources. Raritan Headwaters is an accredited land trust, and we're honored to have been accredited by the Land Trust Accreditation Commission for demonstrating that we meet national quality standards for protecting important natural lands. Raritan Headwaters owns and maintains 9 preserves and natural areas within our watershed, and all are open to the public. Amenities like trails and river access differ from place to place. You can explore our different preserves through our website and then venture out to these spaces. So these preserved lands protect our water quality and safeguard wildlife habitat, filter pollutants from the air, and maintain the rural character of our communities. RHA also holds 33 conservation easements, and in partnership with others has preserved nearly 7,000 acres of critical watershed lands. So this webinar is part of our Watershed Tools for Local Leaders series. These webinars are recorded so that you can access them at any time through our website. The goal of these seminars is to provide expert level knowledge and understanding through interactive discussions, take-home materials, and hands-on planning activities. Workshops are presented by Raritan Headwaters scientists and policy experts, as well as visitors from regulatory agencies, universities, and other nonprofits. In addition, participants and presenters learn from one another's experiences and find ways to partner on projects to protect and restore water resources. So again, you can visit past webinars and recordings through our website, raritanheadwaters.org / watershed tools for local leaders. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker for today, Amy Green, who has been tirelessly working to protect and preserve open space in and around Raritan Township for many years, a friend of RHA's, and also former owner and president of Amy S. Green Environmental Consultants, a trustee for Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey, the chair of the Raritan Township Open Space Advisory Committee, and also on the Raritan Township Environmental Commission. So Amy wears a lot of hats. She's a very busy woman. So very, very excited that she was able to join us today and share some of her knowledge and stories of what she's been doing. A little tiny sliver of what she's been up to. So with that, Amy, please share your story with us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mara, and thanks for this opportunity. And I kind of enjoyed reflecting on a sample project to prepare for this. So yeah, I have a background already in environmental stewardship, preservation, inventory from my work and from my volunteer efforts. I was on the board of and was president for a time of the South Branch Watershed Association. And ever since they merged with Upper Raritan into Raritan Headwaters Association, I've been a strong supporter of the organization. So I'm going to talk about a property today, and this is a picture of it in winter. The Urbach Farm, now we call it the Assiscon Creek Preserve Urbach Tract. And it's actually over 108 acres of land on the County Road 617, Climensville Road. At the time, we were all trying to figure out how to preserve it. It was one of the largest undeveloped properties in our township. It's habitat to a lot of wildlife, pileated woodpeckers, warblers migrating. You can see it's on top of a ridge on the divide between the Assiscon Creek drainage area and the Walnut Brook drainage area. The Assiscon goes directly into the South Branch Raritan River, and Walnut Brook goes there via the Neshannock River. It was a valuable piece of property for all those reasons Mara was talking about, for water quality, flood control, wildlife, scenic beauty, recreation, air quality, everything, carbon sequestration. So we actually got involved in this property professionally because the county was pursuing acquisition of it. And we did a hazardous waste screening, which is one of the steps you have to do in open space preservation. And then I was asked to be on the Raritan Township Open Space Committee by Oliver Elbert, who got on the Township Committee. And he actually is a past trustee of the South Branch Watershed Association. I said, well, if I have a friend on the Township Committee, maybe I can make a difference in our township. So I joined, and I knew a little about, oh, there we go. There's the picture. Oliver's on the right. Bill Kepler's on the left, right? I'm in the middle, John King, and I don't know, that might be Kate. And great, that was after, but a lot happened first. So the county was pursuing acquisition of this property. And Kevin Richardson was a very experienced open space coordinator at that time. And when I started on the open space committee, I said, well, let's figure out how to do this. It hadn't been active in quite a few years. Years before, Marcia Caro had helped preserve a lot of land in our time, but nothing had been happening very much since. And so I wanted to figure out, where do we get the money from and how do we do this? So we invited speakers to come. Green Acres, Kevin Richardson from the county, Hunterdon Land Trust, South Branch Watershed Association, and how do we do this and what kind of funding is available? So we sort of got to know these people. And then I was actually away, and the county, they decided in order to preserve this farm, they needed some Green Acres money. And they sent one of the freeholders, they called them at the time, to Raritan Township Committee, and I was away on vacation, and asked if they would contribute $441,000 of the Green Acres money towards acquisition of this project. Well, he didn't really sell it. He didn't really say, look, you'll get a preserved piece of land and it won't cost you anything. Somehow he talked them out of it and they said no. And Kevin Richardson called me up and told me the whole story about what happened. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. So when I got back, I talked to the Open Space Committee and Oliver Elbert, and I said, wait, this is a good deal. So two of the committee people and I went to the freeholder meeting and said, oh, we changed our mind. We'll give you the Green Acres money. And then they said, that's all you're going to give us? And I was like, oh, do you want more? So they went back to the drawing board and they agreed to kick in $50,000 too, or, you know, some cash too. And they went back to the freeholders again and told them, you know, met the challenge. But they, for whatever reason, politics is always part of these things, they decided not to pursue the project. And they already had a contract with the Orbachs, but they didn't go through with it, the Orbachs. So the property had appraised for $2 million. You could have built 13 houses on this property, would have really changed the character of this part of the town as well as the environmental effects. So we started trying to figure out, well, how can we preserve it? So it takes a village to do these things. So Margaret Waldup was director of the Hunter and Land Trust at the time, and she was determined to figure out how to preserve the property. And so it was $2 million appraised at them. And the Urbachs were a little disgusted, but Beryl Doyle, who was one of the founders of an older organization, Citizens for Parkland, and they preserved years ago parkland in this area. Well, Beryl wanted to make this happen, and she wrote a nice letter to the Urbachs asking them to come back to the table and that the township was interested, and that letter worked. And they came back, and not only did they say they wanted to sell, but they said, in fact, we'll sell it to you at bargain sale for $1.5 million, because we didn't know if we could ever raise $2 million. And then there's a way that they could actually get a tax benefit for the $500,000. And the amazing thing about it being appraised at $2 million, but we only had to raise 1.5, was we could use Green Acres funds, which provide 50% of the appraised value of the property. So we were able to use $1 million of Green Acres money. Well, where did we get that? We only had $440,000. Well, Hunter and Land Trust said, well, we have a little bit lying around. We'll let you use, let's see, make the numbers here. 100, I think it was $45,000 of their Green Acres money. And then Lebanon Township hadn't been spending their Green Acres money. So there's a committee you can apply to at Green Acres to use another town's leftover Green Acres money. And they approved it. And we used that. So we came up to $1 million. And then at that time, so Hunterdon County has their own funding program, open space funding, that they make available to the townships and to nonprofits. And so we approached South Branch Watershed Association. It was a natural fit being in their watershed. And they said, well, you apply and we'll help you. We'll do the application to the county for county matching funds. And so that got approved too. And they kicked in $300,000 that way. And then I guess the township, we applied for another $50,000 to the county, and we came up with $1.5 million. Well, there's more that has to happen. So the hazardous waste investigation that had been done had identified a well on the property, concrete rubble from an old barn, old milk bottles, and you do what's called a preliminary assessment, and Green Acres reviews it to see if there's anything that needs cleaning up or there's issues on a property like this. And they said it's okay to leave the concrete. You have to seal the well, so there's no sort of avenue for pollutants to get down into groundwater. And you can just cover up the milk bottles. We actually got the Hunt Club on the property to help clean up the milk bottles, and we sealed the well. And then there was a hunting club who, there was a lease with Urbach they had, and they were allowed to finish out their lease even after we acquired it. And there was a farmer that had a lease to farm the property, and they were allowed to stay on through their existing agreement. So then South Branch said, you know, we'd really like to see this property stay as a natural area, you know, not be athletic fields or structures. So they wanted passive recreation. So as part of their involvement, they said, we're going to put a conservation easement or a deed restriction on the property, so you can have parking lots and you can have trails and farming, but no athletic fields, active recreation. So that was another thing we had to address at the time. So I guess it all started, at least that I knew of, in 2008. I guess it was in the very beginning of 2012, we finally preserved this piece of land. So it was a real success story. Oh, there you can see it outlined there. So yeah, the top is a hill along 617 Clinesville Road. And then there are sort of these small stream corridors and forests that go to the top of the page to Cherryville Hollow. And the Assasson Creek parallels Cherryville Hollow Road. The township owns some land right across Cherryville Hollow Road already. And then just recently, we acquired another 52 acres. If you go to the left on this, you know, on this road along Clinesville, another big property that also stretches all the way from the top of the hill on Clinesville all the way down to Cherryville Hollow and Assasson Creek. So we always try to connect these open space properties as best we can. So that's a beautiful picture. So just sort of that just gives you a flavor of how many people it takes, and relationships and luck. And when I've had people come on my open space committee, they think, oh, let's do a plan and we'll just go buy the properties we want. But it doesn't work that way. People own these properties. Some of them have owned, their families owned it for 200 years. And it's really about relationships and timing and working on it. Actually, at the same time that this property we were working on, the Ewing farm just down the road, 40 acres was up for sale by the family. And I remember talking to Margaret Waldock, head of the Hunter and Land Trust at the time. I said, gee, how are we going to do, what do we do first? She said, let's do them both. So ultimately we did do them both, and ironically the county ended up preserving that one. So just, there are a lot of steps. You need a willing seller. You often have to develop a relationship with the owner or their heirs. You have to get the township people to approve going forward with it and do the negotiations. You need appraisals, at least 2 appraisals from Green Acres approved appraisers. You have to find the money, but you can do it if you work on it. You can find the matching money. You have to do studies, hazardous waste, etc. The attorneys have to be involved, contracts, deed search, title, surveys. You may have to grant an easement to the county if there's a bridge or a county road there. clean up any hazardous waste, close the well, close the cesspools and septic systems. There may be deed restrictions involved, like it was in this case. Have to see if there are existing leases. Sometimes somebody, one of the partners takes ownership, so it's sort of a simultaneous closing, like for 2 minutes, South Branch owned this property and then transferred or at least part of it transferred the ownership to the town. So in order to be eligible for this Green Acres money, we had to do a open space and recreation plan and get it approved by Green Acres. And then we have what's called a planning incentive grant. So once we have that in place, then we can use whatever funding they provide us to go after properties that fit into that plan. And then funding is always changing. So the county changed the way they gave out money not too long ago. Look for other funding partners. Some of our properties, New Jersey Water Supply has provided funds in the past for acquisition and recently for appraisals and soft costs. We partnered with DNR Greenway, New Jersey Conservation Foundation. So it's all about relationships. But we've had success. Over 10% of our town now is preserved open space, either the town or nonprofits or the state or the county. And another 5% is preserved farmland. And we're not stopping now. We're keeping going at it. So, okay. Any questions, or we'll hold those to the end, or what do you want to do, Mara?
Thank you so much, Amy. That was, what a great story. And it does take a village, all the partners, and thank you for highlighting too, just how, important relationships are. We see these spaces to preserve, water resources and habitat and, for recreation, but I think it's definitely very important to remember that some of these properties, they've been in families for generations, and they have a real connection to this, and it's often about trust too, right? So
trust is big.
Yeah. No, anyone who's has a question, the Q&A is a great place to leave a question. We can certainly take a couple questions right now if anyone has any for Amy, but we can also wait until the end. We'll have an opportunity to discuss some of these projects at the end as well. So let's just see. We have one. Steve Foster, love the stone soup way to get 2 million. Yes.
That's funny. I love it. Stone soup. That's a good one. I'll remember that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Amy. And again, this is just one of many projects you just started to hint at, that have been going on just in this one area here. So thank you for all of your diligence, and I'm excited to see what comes next in the township. But with that, if you can hang on, if you may have other meetings coming up today, but if you can hang on to the end, if anyone else has a question,
sure,
we'll talk about it. So with that, I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Kathy Murphy, who has been working in land preservation for over 2 decades in Mount Olive up around Bud Lake. And Kathy's very active in her community on the Open Space Advisory Board, the Mount Olive Environmental Commission, and the Mount Olive Township Historical Society. So Kathy also has many, many stories to tell. So I'm excited to hear a little bit about some of the few stories that she's going to be sharing with us today. Kathy, if you are able to.
Okay, can you hear me?
Kathy, yes. Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I actually started over 30 years ago now in open space. I was on the Environmental Commission. I was a new member. I knew absolutely zero about acquiring open space. And there was an opportunity that came up in town for Turkey Brook, what became Turkey Brook Park. At the time, there was an application to the planning board for 230 houses on 270 acres. And it was just going to be a nightmare if we saw this property go. The property was almost a half square mile in size, 270 acres. It had endangered species on it, both plant and animal. It had wetlands. It had fields, and we just really wanted to see this as a park. The town only had, for a 30 square mile township, we only had 350 or so square acres of preserved property at the time, mostly parts of the lake and some little pocket parks. So there was always a divide between the Bud Lake side of town and the Flanders side of town. There was sort of a competition. We were divided by a hill and woods. And so we didn't have a cohesive place to meet or come together as a community. So we saw this as a real opportunity. So the big thing was to keep your eye on the prize. It was make sure that whatever you did was going to create a cohesive plan, bring people together, bring funding partners together. And you had to play some politics on this, but it was just do whatever you had to do to get yourself in the path to obtaining that property. So it took countless meetings. Politically, the town was struggling. We needed to bring the town together, but the town had some other big ticket items that they needed to do. They needed a new municipal building, and it was really hard to demonstrate to elected officials that we could do both. And trying to come up with that funding to make it happen was a struggle. Green Acres at the time was low on money. They did give us eventually funding for about 25% of the property. And eventually Morris County came up with its own open space taxes, which has been an absolute godsend over the last couple decades. They came up with another 25%. We're able to get the landowner to come down on the price, mainly because I was lucky enough to run into Don Palmer, who was a big force in the county and a president of Chemical Bank Land Division. And he was able to explain to elected officials what the price should be, which was greatly reduced from what the owner was asking. And there were so many public meetings. We formed an ad hoc residence group. We did so much promotion and work on public perceptions of open space. And I met Laura Schwach. Laura moved into town and joined our committee, and she was just a great force to help us on the way. So in talking about getting Turkey Brook and eventually other properties, it was basically, you have to know your town. You need to know what's out there, what's available, what properties are vacant. You need to know what the property conditions are. You need to look at the connections that you can form with other properties to make a greater impact. So this picture of Turkey Brook here, this was Raw Fields, a farm, and it had changed a number of hands. It wasn't operating to full capacity at the time. But of 270 acres, we have 60 acres that is active recreation. So that went from a cornfield to multiple use. It has united the community. That everything that happens in town for big events is there. And that park is hopping from morning till night. And we have extensive trails. We have a pond down back. We've got woods. We have since acquired another several hundred acres adjoining it. So in all, we're up to over 550 acres of contiguous space. And as you can see, we overlook the lake, and there's a lot of nearby neighborhoods. It's easy to access. We've got a lot of events, and it took almost 5 years to get everything into place. We had so many stumbling blocks along the way. One of the partners in the group, owners, had passed away, and they were dealing with estate issues. That dragged things out. Thought it would never happen, but we were persistent. We were a real thorn in the side to some, and we had to really make nice with a lot of people. And it was a learning experience for all of us, but we pulled it off. And the results have just been transformational to the town. It's an economic engine for the town because people come from out of town, they spend money here. The nearby businesses, the pizza places, any sports places, they're all making money from it. So it's been an absolute asset to the community. And so a lot of that hesitation for preserving open space has gone, and people really jumped on board. So it was really important to make friends along the way and build that public support. So we were able to make this our real signature piece. And it led from having about 350 acres when we started in open space. The town is now up to over 2,000 acres of its own open space. And the state owns another couple thousand acres, parts of Alamucci State Park and all. And there's some other areas that the state owns. So in all, the town is now up to over 30% preservation. And we have a lot of really important relationships that we have built over the years. One thing we were able to do, perhaps you could show the next slide, please. Okay, this is an area map. I wanted to show the slide of Crown Towers with the lake, the boat on the lake. Oops, okay, there's the boat. If you take a look at that little boat there and the ridge behind it, that was the Crown Towers project, 500 acres overlooking the lake. And there was a development proposed for about 200 houses. So if you think of that strip of land overlooking the lake being pretty much sheared off and having a couple hundred houses on it, just think of the impact it would have. Environmentally, just visually, it was just going to be something else. And that was a project that took almost 2 years to do. We wound up having 5 funding partners: the town, the county, the state. We had Trust for Public Land help broker this deal, and we had the Morris County Municipal Utility Authority as a partner as well. So that 500 acres wound up becoming part of Alamucci State Park. The town brokered the deal with Trust for Public Land, but it had joined Alamucci State Park. So we wanted that to eventually go to the state so it could be part of that whole northern part of the town. And it was quite a spectacle because we had to deal with so many planning board issues and trying to maneuver and come up with strategic plans. And is it time to talk to the owner? No, let them lick their wounds. Let's back off on this. Let's develop a different relationship on showing them how it's economically feasible and beneficial to them. So a lot of planning and strategy to pull that off. And we were able to do that. And so now it's part of a whole network of trails and a lot of, species that were protected up there that would just have been devastated if we had developed that. And the third thing that I wanted to talk about was eventually our plans for the future, and that includes some Morris Canal properties. The Morris Canal, of course, goes from Liberty State Park all the way to the Pennsylvania border, and it straddles about four counties. And there's a plan to try to reconnect this as much as possible to create a contiguous trail from one side of the state to the other. And one of the main links is Mount Olive, where we only have portions of the property preserved. So we are working with the Canal Society of New Jersey, with other regional funding partners, and we're trying to link this up. So we've done some important preservation, but we still have little bits and pieces to go. So that's an important part of anybody's plan, is to try to come up with ways to make those contiguous links, to sell that to the public, get that public support online, but also to show the owners how it's advantageous to them, show your elected officials how it's economically advantageous to do this. And it's an ongoing project. So working with the Canal Society, we've really been able to make some good headway on this, and we're really looking forward to being able to get the funding ready for different trails with the infrastructure program that's come available from the federal funding. We need to meet deadlines so that we have different strategies available so that we can make this a cohesive plan and get that regional support that's going to bring the money in for the acquisition and development of trails. So be ready to think outside the box on this stuff. And if the more you know about your town, the more you know about the conditions and the properties and the partners that you have available, the better you will see, the more you'll see in success with your partners, and the more you can accomplish. So make friends, keep eye on the prize, and you'll be able to be successful in these things. So it's a big commitment, and it's many hours of doing this, but the rewards are terrific. So for yourself, I wound up getting a job out of it because I was able to get the funding for Turkey Brook originally. Basically, the elected officials in town said, well, if she could do this as a volunteer, let's create a job and see what she can do to not only do open space, but I did other grants too, whether it was for the fire and police or roads and things like that. But it turned into a job, and I've got a lot of friends that I've made, so worth doing. So I will be willing to certainly entertain any discussion on that. And there's a lot of other projects as well.
Well, congratulations, Kathy. That's fantastic work that you've done up there.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kathy. And I'm always so impressed by your modesty. You started with just a few hundred acres preserved there, and to achieve, roughly 30% preservation is just amazing. And thank you also. I mean, Bud Lake is most of you know, is the source of the south branch of the Raritan River. So it's where it all starts. And so so important to have those preserved lands for to get the river off on on a good start on its way down. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next up there as well. And certainly if anyone has any questions or comments, please do share in the Q&A, and you can raise your hand, and I can also unmute you if you'd like to join the discussion. But yeah, these are great stories, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more. And so I do hope that many of you will return and come back at future sessions of this stories and land preservation to hear more, because as I mentioned, and as I think Amy and Kathy talked about, each project is different. Each project has its own set of challenges, and partners involved, and how we approach getting the funding necessary, and all the different little pots of money that we have to bring together to be able to make these projects succeed. So yeah, put my video back on. And I mentioned at the beginning also, these recordings will be shared on our website, and we also have a YouTube page where you can view past recordings. Okay. Okay, well, I seems to have stopped the recording. That's okay.
Okay, good.
I don't think we had any more questions, so I'm not sure what happened there, but that's okay. Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you, Kathy, for sharing stories today. And I really do look forward to seeing what comes next, and hope to partner with each of you on the next big project. And yeah, thank you so much. And
yeah, I was thinking about that. We should do the 30-30, right? 30% by 2030. But you're there already in Mount Olive.
Yeah, we're getting there. That's right.
We'll try to catch up.
Well, we were fortunate in that we had the state parks
right.
available. I mean, one good thing, I basically set up a relationship with Green Acres, and we said, look, here's what we're going to do. If a property becomes available along, near state land, I'm going to call you at the state, and you can acquire that. And if the water authority needs a piece of property, they're going to take this area of town, and everything else we'll go after.
Divide and conquer.
And well, it worked out. And I was able to pick up the phone a couple times and call Green Acres and say, this property's coming up and you should acquire it. And they did.
Oh, that's great.
They did. I didn't have to do the work on it, and it was their money, but we were able to help broker this and make those contacts with the owners.
Yeah, we work very well, continue to work well with the county, and we're working on some projects together now. Yeah. They did that Ewing Farm preservation, which is fantastic. And we're working on a property now with Reddington, Hunterdon County, Reddington Township, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, Hunterdon Land Trust, some riverfront property along the South Branch and with the Raritan Headwaters. Yeah. There's a big greenway. The DOT was going to build a bypass between 31 and 202, but they're not building that. So we're going through the process of working with the county, who's taking the lead now because they have the big pockets, of trying to create a greenway using those DOT-owned lands. Yeah. So every project has its own.
We had one time I picked up the newspaper one day, and here was an article that Morris County was the Board of Ed was selling a piece of property.
Oh no,
in Mount Olive. And I'm like, so I called the county, Morris County Planning, and I said, well, I want to buy this property. I want to apply for it through Morris County funding. And they're like, but we would be buying our own property. And I said, yes. I said, why are you selling property when you are busy trying to preserve it on the other side? You're not talking to each other.
Yeah,
So
no,
if you're going to sell it, the Board of Ed's going to sell it. I want the planning department, your preservation trust, to pay for it.
yeah, you gotta
And
watch out for things.
they're like, you're killing me, Kathy. You know?
The voice
said,
of reason just swooped right in there.
So within a day, they changed the policy, and they just basically took it off the market and quietly transferred it from one department to another.
Oh, that's a miracle.
But it's like, this should never,
boards of education do operate kind of independently, right? Their land is, it's a right thing. Yeah, so, our open space committee really works together. Everybody brings something to the table. So one of our members, Joel, is he's a retired teacher, but he's a realtor. So he checks all the multiple listings for us when things come up, and so that's been working out. One of them came up along the Wickeecheokee Creek, where New Jersey Conservation Foundation focuses, and we alerted them, and it's preserved land now. We partner with them. Yeah. You just never know. You got to be there at the right time. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes you get another shot at it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not successful every time, and we've had our defeats, but we've had more successes. Yeah. And
like you were saying, you had to convince the town that preserving open space was a good thing, right? And I guess there's an old thinking that, we need rateables. Well, you put in 200 homes, they need schools and policing and plowing the roads, and people don't understand. They don't pay for themselves, and there's an environmental cost, of course. And you just have to keep teaching and educating and explain what's important.
Yeah, I mean, we have a proposal now for a development for almost 500 homes.
Wow.
And people are just freaking out over it. And at the same time, it's like the owner has a right to develop. It's private property. It will happen. The town, can't stop it. It's just trying to make sure that it's most appropriately used. Right. But what we can do is, for the open space component that will be required on that property, is to make sure it goes in the right hands. We don't want it to go into a homeowners association because it contains parts of the Morris Canal. So it's a question of, should the state take it? Should the town take it? How can we get the Canal Society to, have input on how it's used, or how it's, the historic resources are preserved. Right. So it's a question of making sure that we handle this correctly for the future. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And
the people in that development are going to use it. We want it to have public access. So we want to make sure that we handle this correctly, and that we make the connections with the Canal Society on this. Right. So
and then stewardship of open space is a whole nother piece of the puzzle.
Right? Yeah.
So what the deer in our town are eating up all the baby trees. So we established
we were able to do another property that was over 200 acres, close to 200 acres. But it would have been over 200 homes right on the corner of Route 46 with an intersection that has a high accident rate. And we were able to get our land consultant, Land Conservancy of New Jersey, actually took possession of that property. They purchased it, and they've done a great job with it, because now you've got a community garden there. They've got
I visited that
going there. Yeah, they've got bird blinds and trails, and
right. I planted some trees there. For that.
They're restoring chestnut forest and stuff like that. So they've been a great partner on some properties that they own and operate in town. And the community support has been great for them. They're doing good things in the, with that land, and we're so happy that they preserved it. So
right, what a difference. Yeah, they fenced it in.
Yeah,
keep the deer out. Yeah.
Trying to hook everybody out, hook up the right partners.
Understood. Right.
It's been important. So.
I'm kind of curious about the conservation easements that the townships hold, and just managing those and keeping an eye on them, doing the monitoring for them. I know a lot of municipalities kind of struggle with, just not even maintenance, but just really tracking them, keeping an inventory, and then, ensuring that they're protected in the way that they were intended to be protected. So I don't know if you guys have any experience with that, but
yeah. Well, it's part of, one of the things you have to do to maintain your planning incentive grant is to keep your recreation and open space inventory updated. So not just preserve the open space, but you also have to inventory the conservation easements as well. But you're right to actually monitor them, make sure somebody's not building a shed on it or cutting down the trees where they're not supposed to. Gets to be a big task. Our town's been very good about when they approve developments requiring preservation, conservation easements. But actually we're talking now, Hunterdon Land Trust is helping Reddington Township monitor their conservation easements. So I'm talking to them about giving us a hand too. Maybe we could get a grant.
One of the upshots of our open space committee has developed a trail stewardship plan. So we're fortunate to have some really good members on the open space committee they've been great with going out and planning trails and GPS locating everything so that they're mapped correctly, make sure we don't not treading on neighbors' properties, identifying where trails should be, marking the trails. We've got scout troops and other, little groups in town that are adopting trail segments, and they go out and maintain them. They pick up garbage, they look for fallen limbs, and they trim back brush and all sorts of stuff. And that's been a really good thing that's occurred too. So that helps us maintain, especially those conservation areas. And we have a top-notch recreation department and buildings and ground crew that maintains Turkey Brook Park and other parks, and handles public events and all sorts of stuff. So
they're an important partner, DPW. And we just got we acquired 35 acres, beautiful forest along the Plum Brook, which is a tributary of the Wicked Creek. And the previous owner had maintained very nice trails there. He had like a forest, stewardship plan, but he never cut trees. He just would harvest fallen trees. And so one of an Eagle Scout just marked all the trails and made a beautiful sign, and DPW made a parking lot. And we're in the process of GPSing all our trails and existing trails in town. We haven't branched out into creating new ones yet. One of our the Morales Park along the Walnut Brook, that had one of the local Jim's Health Quest was stewarding that and helping to maintain the trails, but they were looking for somebody to take over. So I sold my business over 3 years ago. I called them up and I said, "Hey, you want to take over being the volunteer stewards of this property that, we're in the town where you are?" And they agreed. So that was good.
Nice. That's great.
It's good to know everybody. Ask favors.
There's a lot to it. I mean, there's always something new that comes up, and there's always some, new wrinkle here and there, whether it's an acquisition or maintenance and development. It's a huge process.
Or a hurricane comes through and, knocks things.
Yeah. Well, when we first bought Turkey Brook, like the very next year, we had a storm cell came through and dropped 3 huge trees on the Seward house. And it just crushed the whole one portion of the house. And we're doing historic restoration now, and what a difference. What a difference between the original acquisition and where we are.
Oh, good job.
I can't wait till the house is done. Yeah, because it was really in ruins. And
yeah, I'll give you a call. We have another issue like that.
Yeah, well, that's just it. We're involved in historic preservation as a result of the acquisition. So that's been a whole new learning curve as well.
Yeah, when you get a property with a building on it, it's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, so we now have 3 separate historic preservation projects going on because of this. So, like I said, I started knowing absolutely zero about this process. So, started with the open space preservation, now the historic preservation. We've done cleanups,
Yeah, we do that too.
We've had all sorts of wrinkles.
So it was kind of full circle. The South Branch Watershed Association, they used to have monthly get-togethers of people doing open space preservation over at Cohill Park. Invite people to talk and confer, and you've started it up again, Mara. So that's good.
It's gonna go. Well, it's just obvious, as you start to talk about this, you really do learn as you go, and being able to share these experiences. I mean, I can't think of one university that offers a course in how to land preservation 101. So I mean, you get into it and then you just start to learn as you tackle each project. So and with that, I think that's a great way to close. And again, thank you for sharing your experiences, because it is the only way we really learn how to do this, and how the next generation of people who are going to continue this work are going to learn how to do it is from people who come before them. So so thank you to both of you so much, and we'll get those meetings going, Amy, and and we'll talk more. Thank you. Enjoy this day, and we'll talk to you and see you guys soon.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.